Hi, dear students. Very good morning to you all. This is once again Dr. Prasanna.T, all the way from Government First Grade Women's College, Shumaga. Today, we are here to discuss one wonderful topic which is relating to the human resource management, particularly on performance appraisal. Dear students, this is the session of 55 that I am going to discuss on the topic traditional methods of performance appraisal. In the previous session, that is on 54th session, that I discussed methods of performance appraisal, which are categorized by mainly in a three-way, where the performance appraisal can be done particularly from the human resource manager. The thing is, there are much importance giving particularly regarding the performance appraisal as far as the employees are concerned. There are three methods that we are followed in the previous session. That is, one is graphical rating system, second one is behavioral aspects, and the number three is they follow the 2+2 method. So those three methods that in the human resource management, particularly in performance appraisal, that they are going to do the same way, where in which the organization and then the companies, or you may call it as the private sectors, or it may be the government sector, are also having these types of criteria which they will make it out the making an appraisal of performance which can be evaluating. So that session that we broadly divided into three categories. That is, number one is what do you call a graphic rating system. Number two is the behavioral method, and the number three is a 2+2 method. So with this, let me move on to the this session that I am going to discuss what are those traditional methods of performance appraisal that we are having, particularly to make the appraisal of that employee, particularly those who are following to make an appraisal from the point of view of the organization, and also from the point of view of the companies. Either it may be situated in the private sector, or it may be situated in public sector. So with this, let me start the new concept, that is traditional methods of performance appraisal. There are nearly eight traditional methods of performance appraisal are there. That is, number one is rating scales, number two is checklist, number three is forced choice method, number fourth one is forced distribution method, number fifth one is critical incidents method, and sixth one is behavioral anchored rating scale, and then seventh one is field review method, and then the last but not it is least, which is the performance test and then observation. So these are all the eight traditional methods of performance appraisal that we are discussing, particularly regarding to the performance appraisal. Let's move on to discuss in detail by getting more example relating to these eight traditional methods of performance appraisal. Let's move on to number one is rating scales. The numerical scale is prepared that represents this job evaluation criterion, such as the output, initiatives, attendance, attitude, dependability, etc., and ranges from excellent to the poor. Thus, each employee is given the rating based on his performance against each set criteria, and then the consolidated score is computed accordingly. The rating scales are one of the easiest traditional method of performance appraisal and can be applied to any job. See, the thing is, in the previous session that I discussed this method in detail, that making the what do you call the method of graphic rating system. So here also the same thing, that the company is going to make it a performance appraisal by evaluating the employee, which is always based on the output, initiatives, attendance, and then his attitude, behavioral aspects, and also level of thinking will always to be considered from poor to excellent, either it may be the agree or it may be the disagree, good, best, better, all together will be considered while rating the scales of that employee. There are many such performance appraisal may be considered for employee when he is going to given the rating based on his performance against each set criteria, and then the consolidated score is computed according to the organizational rules and regulation. The rating scales are one of the easiest traditional method of performance where that appraisal can be applied to any job for that matter. So this is what the rating scales is all about. Moving on to the second method of traditional method of performance appraisal is checklist. A checklist of employee traits in the form of statement is prepared where the rater put a tick mark in for mentioning yes or no column against the trait checked for each employee. Once the checklist gets completed, the rater forwards the list to the human resource department for the final evaluation of the employee. So this is what things could be particularly in regarding to the traditional methods of performance appraisal. That is, if the organization with the help of human resource manager are going to make it out of the questions from 1 to 10, then they are going to raise the question from 1 to 10 by asking the answer just yes or no. So with that yes or no, if yes is 50% and then no is 50%, then the attitude and then behavior and then the level of thinking of that employee is equals, and then it is always a balanced one. But when we are going to considering the fact of the checklist, which is yes is more than no, then the performance is good of the employee, and then no is more than yes, then there is a employee must need training and then development for his job for that matter. Once the checklist gets the completed, the rater forwards the list of human resource department for the final evaluation of employee should always be considered in this traditional method of performance appraisal, particularly under checklist. Number 3 is forced choice method. This is also one of the best method to use in the performance appraisal. Way back in 1980s and then 1970s, the forced choice method has been used to rater forced to the answer the ready-made statements as given in the blocks of 2 or more about the employees in terms of true or false. Once he is done with the list, it is forwarded to the human resource department for the final assessment of the employee. So this is what things could be when regarding to the forced choice method are concerned. This is one way in which the traditional method of performance appraisal are to be considered by asking true or false to the employees and then making a little bit of what you call ready-made statements given in the his answer scripts or answer book. He is supposed to give the answer by having the true and then false to make it a sense that there should be the human resource department should always be the final assessment of that employee. And then the fourth one is a forced distribution method. This method of performance appraisal is based on the assumption that employee is a job performance conforms to the normal distribution curve, that is a bell-shaped curve. Hence, the rater is compelled to put employees on each point on the scale. So it is seen that cluster of the employees is placed at the highest point of the ranging scale. See, this is also one of the best method while using in the performance appraisal by the way of a traditional method. Forced distribution method we are also using in what do you call the while you are going to job performance conforms in regarding to the employee, there should be a normal distribution of the appearance of the bell curve should be there, because the bell curve is like this. See, downward it will start from here and then it will goes upward and then it is comes downward. Like this bell curve is there, we will also consider this to in relating to the non-linear function r to the quadratic formula, where in nonlinear, when we are going to analyze the market equilibrium, where should be a demand and then supply should be equal, or somehow the demand is more comparing to the supply, because supply side is always from the on the basis of the aggregate demand. So supply should be the, there are more or less, it is not competitively fulfilled by the government compared with the aggregate demand. So this is what the distribution curve of that bell shaped curve will be appears, particularly while we are doing the traditional method of performance appraisal, particularly in forced distribution method. When you are going to make the rating of that employee, the each point on the scale, that is agree, disagree, good, better, best, are to be considered, and a cluster of the employees is placed at the highest point on the rating scale. So this is how things could be in regarding to the forced distribution method. Dear students, let's move on to the other four methods of traditional methods of performance. Those are critical incident method. Let us discuss what it is all about. Critical incidents method. Under this method, the critical behavior of each employee that make a difference in the effective or non-effective performance is recorded by the supervisor and is taken into consideration while evaluating his performance. See, this is one aspect that where the employer or the organization are going to use this way of method by making an appraisal of the employee performance. See, if the employee is effective or if the employee is non-effective, it should be done under this method, where it will be recorded by the supervisor, particularly of that employee. If the human is productive or unproductive, nowadays it is a very much discussing issue, which is the current debatable issue. There should be a difference in the effective and the non-effective performance, where the supervisor is altogether is going to consider in the performance of the the employee by evaluating his performance. So this is how things could be, particularly while we are discussing the critical incidents method. They move on to the sixth traditional method of performance appraisal, that is behaviorally anchored rating scale. Behaviorally anchored rating scale is nothing but which will be always descriptive statements about the employee's behavior. Both effective and ineffective are put on the scale points that the rater is asked to indicate which behavior points described the employee behavior the best. See, this is things could be while we are discussing about the behavior of that employee should always be considered as far as the the effective and then ineffective are concerned. See, the behavior and then descriptive statement of that point is concerned. Here also we are going to use the scale of rating method by using 1 to 5, by having the poor and then best, good, or you may use it agree, disagree, poor, good, best, better, like that from 1 to 5, or you may call it as poor to excellent. They are going to range it by making the performance appraisal, particularly of that employee. So dear students, what I am trying to say is that the behavior of that employee must always to be under a scale of rating to reach out how he is anchoring the issue, particularly how he is balancing the method of the behavior, particularly while doing the work under the workforce of that organization or in the companies. So these are all the things. I am a little bit sweating because here in Shumaga the humidity is more, that we are not sitting properly and then doing these types of presentation, because here lots of humidity is there in Shumaga. This is how things could be. One side we are facing pandemic, and the another side we are facing the humidity. This is totally disastering. What do you call there is a disadvantage for this way. So okay, you leave it to that issue. Let's come back to the this behavioral anchored rating scale, where it is always a descriptive statement about the employee behavior, and also where it could be considered effective and then ineffective, which would be the scale point of the rater is asked to indicate which behavior points describe the employee behavior in the most, or it may be the best. The seventh traditional method of performance appraisal is field review method. Under this method, the performance evaluation of an employee is done by someone who does not belong to his department or is usually from the corporate office or the human resource department. The outsider reviews the performance of an employee through his records and holds interviews with the assessees and his supervisors. See, say for example, an organization wants to analyze the employee not from in his own company HR, but he will give the instruction to the other human resource manager or other resource department, or it will allot to the corporate officer, those who are not in that company, and then they may do the the performance evaluation of the employee, which will always the field review method. We are following under a traditional way of method by doing the performance appraisal. See, if the outsider is going to review the performance of an employee, it is always to be a moderate one, which is not having any partiality or bifurcation by making evaluating of the performance appraisal. Performance appraisal is one where in which that the good performance, and then the other issues are to be considered, particularly of that employee, which should be the record and is all issues of that employee interview with the assessees of his superiors. So this is how things could be in regard to the field review method, that what actually the outsider will come to the organization and then they will review the employee performance on the basis of asking by question, by making the question and then by asking yes or no question, or asking the true or false question, particularly to the employee. So it is this method is also helpful for to make a balance between employer and then employee, particularly to lead the good result in organization, and also to get good performance and also get effectiveness in the organization. This field review method will always to be considered as a traditional method of performance appraisal, which should lead the better performance of that employee. Let's move on to the last traditional method of performance appraisal is performance tests and observation. The test, either written or oral, is conducted to test the knowledge and the skills of the employees. Sometimes the employee is asked to demonstrate his skills in the given situation, and then he is evaluated on that basis. See, if the observation are to be made out from the manager or from the employer or from that organization, this is I am not believing on this or I am not trust on this method to make evaluate of that performance appraisal, because by making an observation, I don't think so it may be appear a partiality, there may be a bifurcation to be seen as far as the employees are concerned. I don't think so the knowledge and then skills are to be considered only through making observation of that employee. So this is the performance test of the observation, where moderately or apparently they must do the test by having or by seeing the knowledge and then skill of the employees. From that knowledge and then skill of that employee, whether that employee are sometimes asked to demonstrate his skills, he must readily to say the thing is that whether in the situation like that he is going to be evaluated on that basis or not, he may do the performance appraisal by having the traditional method, that is performance test and observation. So these are all the 8 methods, traditional methods of performance appraisal that I discussed in this session. Dear students, in the previous session of the session 54, that is, I discussed only three methods which are basically categorized methods broadly, which are the graphic rating method, number two is behavioral method, number three is 2 plus 2 method. So here the three aspects should be considered as far as things could be appears while we are doing the traditional method of performance appraisal. So when we are going to discuss the point wise, let us again discuss about, so not necessary to discuss, once again I want to highlight the traditional methods of performance appraisal. That is, number one is rating skills, number two is checklist, number three is forced choice method, number four is forced distribution method, and then fifth one is critical incident method, sixth one is behaviorally anchored rating scale, seventh one is field review method, and then last one is performance test and then observation. So these are all the 8 traditional methods of performance appraisal that I discussed in this session. So with this, dear students, I want to stop here because this is elaborate that I made it out. Let's in the last session, obviously, that I have incorporated source of reference for your study purpose, and also I incorporated many preparing study material, MCQs, and then PPT. According to these source of references, I prepared my what do you call PPTs. Dear students, I request you to please follow these study material to get more knowledge and then to get more study material, not only for the purpose of by getting knowledge but also for the purpose of your examination. With this I will stop here. This is the session of 55 where I discussed in detail of traditional methods of performance appraisal. Dear students, I will stop here. I will come up with a new topic in the new session. With this, bye bye, take care.